So we will start off with the instructions on how to make public comments since we've been on Zoom for so long. At points in the meeting, when the meeting chair requests, I guess it's me, public comment, members of the public shall indicate their desire to speak. All public comments shall be addressed to the board of directors and limited to a 3-minute per speaker. And since we had the clock on the Zoom, we decided to get a clock to keep us honest, and the board of directors may choose to respond to comments or request staff to respond at the conclusion of all of the public comment period. All right, so I guess we're going to do a call to order.
Board President Oyserman.
Oh my goodness, I'm here.
Director Case.
Here.
Director Kilkenny.
Here.
Director Ruggieri. Here. Director Shea.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Consistent.
So usually the agenda is a quick thing, but we're going to actually, I'm going to ask everybody if it's okay. We've got somebody here to give us a presentation on our financial audit, and so we're going to actually move that to before the consent calendar, as long as that is okay.
I'm only here for a short period of time. Can I do my public comment before? I'm not going to be staying for her.
You aren't?
I'm not.
Okay, so we need-
I'll watch you on tape.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Eric, are you okay with Stephen?
I'm fine. Michelle, you mind?
You mind waiting for a couple minutes? Okay, all right, go ahead. Well, we're gonna move the public comment to before the consent calendar, then we're gonna do the presentation from Michelle, and then the consent calendar. So do you have those edits?
Should we
Written
adopt
down?
the agenda?
So can we adopt the agenda with those changes?
Sure.
Okay,
I'm good.
all right then. So go ahead, Stephen, we're gonna do the public
Okay.
comment, open time for items not on the agenda.
It's good seeing y'all.
You too.
It really is. I want you to imagine something, that you're on a world trip and you rented out your house and you're going to leave for 3 years, and your house is in the hands of a property manager. And you have a wonderful time on your trip and you come back, and lo and behold, you come and you look at your backyard and there is a wall in your backyard. Your neighbor built a wall in the back, and you ask the property manager, what's this about? He says, well, your nice neighbor that you like so much built a wall, and he paid for everything. Don't worry about it. My workman took care of it. It's fine. And basically that's the situation we have now on Quietwood and behind the, I really don't want to identify the house. You know the house I'm talking about. It's outrageous. It is a breach of trust. It violates our property rights. It's going to create problems having that intrusion on our property, even though the people paid for it themselves. They paid our workmen, so there was an inducement. It is completely wrong, and it's a legal situation and needs to be addressed immediately. That's issue number one. Issue number two, and I'm going to be very brief tonight, is the ongoing issue with the binge drinking parties in the park. Not everyone is a binge drinker. I see one attendee now. He never drinks, but it happens. And this past Friday I was there. I saw the guys. They were whooping it up, doing what they normally do, and I said to them in very direct terms that I thought their behavior was completely immature for middle-aged guys. They were acting like 15-year-old drinking in the park, and essentially the behavior is just completely wrong. We do prohibit it in this park. I did call the police afterwards. I want to backtrack a little bit. After a few words, some guy came up to me, and Bill knows who he is. I don't know who he is. He said, "You better apologize to me." I said, "Who are you?" "You better apologize." He kept on asking. And I said, no, I'm not gonna, and I backed off and then he said, where do you live? Where do you live? Where do you live? Well, they know where I live. It was intimidation. It was bullying. And the reason I bring this up is that this is the kind of mentality we're dealing with back there. This needs to stop. I have a few more things to say about this. I did call the police and I can tell you about that interaction if you like. Would you like to hear this part of the story?
I think that maybe we can take this not during the meeting, and you and I can have a discussion about this later. Is that okay with you, Stephen?
Well, you've got 5 board members. It's gonna be less than a minute if you really want to shut down the discussion now. But I did want to tell you that the police officer came and he said, there's no open container laws. I can't do a darn thing. I said, well, what are you talking about? No open container laws in unincorporated area. I said, well, what do you mean? And he says, well, they have to be falling down drunk before we arrest them. I said, okay. Let me ask you this. They kick people out of McGinnis Park all the time for having drinking parties. And guess where they come? They come right here to Marinwood. Are you saying that Marinwood is the only place in the North Bay where you can have drinking parties? I want you to think about this. I don't want you to look at this, hey, I know that guy, I know that guy. I want you to look at this from a public interest standpoint. These guys have alternatives. They can go to people's backyards. They don't have to do it in our park. It's against park rules. Every single park in the North Bay, in fact, all across the country, prohibits this kind of behavior. So, if you want to just look the other way on that, you're responsible for anyone who comes over here to do drinking. And by the way, the people that get kicked out in McGinnis, they happen to be Latino. And why are the Latinos treated so much differently than white people?
This is a little bit
Okay.
over what we're supposed to be doing. Thank you for your comment. We will
Okay, this
Thank
is
you
your
for your
response.
comment.
Both of these things
Thank you for your
are.
comment, Stephen.
Okay.
You cannot speak over me. All right, I guess.
You did speak over me. I was going to complete the comments.
I let you speak.
Okay.
We are now going to move on.
Fair enough.
To listen to Michelle.
The issue doesn't go away,
of
though.
Our financial year 2021-2022 audit.
Hello.
Thank you, Michelle.
Hi.
Sorry about that.
No, that's
Welcome.
okay. Thanks for having me.
Before Michelle gets going, can I just, I placed these in front of everybody. Michelle sent this to us today, so that's why it wasn't
Perfect.
included in the packet, but it's a little highlight presentation. And
Thank you.
our AV technology in here was broken, so you get printouts.
I love it. Thank you. All right.
On this side of the screen.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Michelle from O'Connor & Company. Usually Michael, he would attend, but he has another board meeting to attend for a different client, so
Okay.
I'm here in place of him today. So anyway, so let's get started. So if we look at the first page of the audit presentation, it basically describes the opinion that we issued to Marin Community Service District. So overall, we issued an unmodified opinion. There was no material misstatements or significant deficiencies that we found in the audit. It was a very clean audit, so therefore we give a clean unmodified opinion. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the next page. Oops, sorry. So the next page here we have is our statement of net position of the governmental activities. The statement of net position is prepared on a full accrual basis, and as you can see here, it lists out the governmental activities, total assets and liabilities. And at the bottom, you'll see that the total change in that position is $209,883. So this amount represents your total assets less your total liabilities. So we'll go ahead and go to the next page. So the next page, we have our statement of activities. It basically outlines the changes in the revenue and expense activities for the fiscal year for governmental activities. And so at the bottom, you'll see total change in that position is a positive amount of $1,525,819, which is a great change compared to the last year's deficit amount of $1,315,000. and that $936. So let's go ahead and go to the next page. So here we have our governmental fund balance sheet. This is prepared on a modified accrual basis of accounting, which includes both cash basis as well as accrual basis. And over here you'll see that this fund balance lists out the total assets, liabilities, and changes in fund balance for the two major funds, which are the general fund and the Measure A fund. And at the bottom you'll see the change in fund balance for general fund is $7,190,000. $120, and for Measure A is $67,398. So again, these amount represents your total assets, that's your total liabilities. So we'll go ahead and go to the next page. So here we have statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance of governmental fund. Again, these just outlines changes in revenues and expenditure for both the general fund and Measure A fund. So at the bottom, you see the changes in general fund. We have a net positive fund balance of $1,140,211, and for Measure A fund, there's a deficit amount of $217,281. So let's go ahead and go to the last page. So some key things for the management report. There were no significant change in accounting policies. All accounting estimates were appropriate. All audit adjustments were corrected by management. There were no disagreements with management during the audit. We didn't encounter any kind of difficulties during the audit. There is one current year observation, which is the new GASB 87 accounting standard lease that we have to start implementing in future periods. So basically, what this is that we do want the district to come up with a capitalization policy of any lease assets that they have of over $30,000 or over. So any lease asset could include things like renting a vehicle, office spaces, copy machines, so anything like that. We have to start implementing that. We have to capitalize those lease assets on the report going forward. So just something to keep in mind. Just want to give a special thanks to Tiffany and Eric for all their help during the audit. So, they made the whole process very easy and very smooth. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
Can I go through just a couple things
Yeah,
first
sure.
before questions? So, a couple of the kind of key things to note on here, in my opinion, if you look on the, I guess, third to last page, which is the statement of revenues, expenditures, so on and so forth, looks like
It's
this
page
one.
11.
Page 11, sorry, I don't have a page. number.
It says page, government funds, page 11, right? Here's on the left side.
Oh, yeah, government fund, page 11, yes. If you go down about 2/3 of the way, you see where it says excess, parentheses, deficiency of revenues over under expenditures. That number is 490,211. So what that number represents, essentially just from operating within our general fund, is our revenue over expenditures for the year before you take into account the $650,000 loan that we took in. So if we never took in that loan, but we still did all of the work that was associated with that loan, which we did, we still would have finished $490,000 in the black. With the loan, obviously, that brought our total change in fund balance to the 1.14 million because you're adding the 650 to it. So I wanted to point that out. I again, agree and think the loan was a great idea, especially for the rate that we got it at, because that rate is quadrupled at this
Yes.
point in time. But it just, back to the point that I was trying to make at the beginning when you all approved that project, was we could afford it. And at the end of the day, even without the money, we still finished 500,000 ahead, which is good. The other thing I wanted to point out is when you look at the page that says page 8, statement of activities, and the total net position, I certainly want to point out that this is the first time since GASB 68 was implemented that we have had a positive net position, and quite possibly before that. GASB 68 is what caused us to put all of our long-term pension liabilities on the balance sheet and recognized within our audited financials, which obviously added several $1 million worth of debt to it. Another reason for the big swing here too is that For the year that was measured, CalPERS performed very well, which brought down long-term liability. So the chances of this going back into negative next year, when they measure the year that just recently finished, where they had a negative 6% return or something along those lines, is gonna cause a big swing here too. So this is taking a lot of numbers into account when it looks at your total net position. Some of those numbers are 30-year actuarial liabilities. That said, to be in a positive position at the end of this year is certainly an accomplishment considering where it was, 4 years ago.
That's great.
Thank you, Eric, for pointing those things out.
Yeah, and if there's any other questions, I'm happy to.
Does anybody on the board have some questions about anything that was just presented to Michelle or Eric?
The only other thing I would state is the observation about the new GASB Rule 87, which causes capitalization of leased assets. The only thing that we would have that would apply here is the copy machine. This is very new. Michael and his team, they didn't even have samples from other agencies because other agencies haven't adopted this yet. This kind of just got implemented this year. I will poke around via CSDA and other things and see if we can't get a hold of a couple samples. And a lot of talk I'm hearing is, looking at a capitalization policy that excludes minor things like a copy machine from having to, because if you gotta start capitalizing that and it's a lease, it becomes hard. It's a lot of work for what is ultimately a borrowed, a rented asset. This isn't, we don't have a rental fleet of vehicles or anything along those lines. We have something that we pay a few $1,000s a year for. But so I'll also reach out to them to see if they have examples from other public agencies who they leased to.
Right, so wasn't it $30,000 or more?
Yes, but the tricky part is we also have a 5-year lease. So when you look at it
Over the 5 years. it'll
Right,
be
so it also might
$30,000.
just mean reworking, instead of doing 5-year terms, doing 3-year terms or 4-year terms, if they would do it. So we'll figure it out, and 30,000 was a benchmark. I'll also want to look in to see what are reasonable benchmarks. Is 35,000 a reasonable benchmark? So on and so forth. Because given our current lease for our copy machine, we're actually kind of right around that 30,000 lifetime lease number for it.
Yeah.
Right, but there's also ways around that. We pay a higher lease because we pay very low, we have very high thresholds for printing. So all of the printing is included in the lease until we cross a certain threshold. We used to have a very inexpensive lease, but we paid a lot for every page we printed over a certain amount, and we would always far exceed. So our lease payments are higher, but our overall payments are much lower than what they used to be. So we'll just have to look at it and draw up a lease agreement that makes sense.
All right, just let us know.
Yeah, we'll bring this, this isn't a rush, we don't need
Yeah.
one next meeting, but we'll certainly put one in place ideally by the end of this fiscal year, if not shortly thereafter.
Okay, perfect. All right, I don't have any questions, Bill. All right. Thank you,
Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
I know
Good
you're
job.
kind of nervous,
Oh,
but
it's my
you did great.
It's my first time.
You did awesome.
And you didn't yell at us, so. I know.
You guys.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Can I ask for a formality then, and somebody just make a motion and second to accept the audit management report as presented, and then I'll get a non-draft copy from Michelle, we'll put it up on our website, and I got a couple other people who are waiting on it too. So.
Can
Okay.
I motion as the president? No.
You can.
Okay, I motion to accept the audit from Michelle for the 2021-2022 financial statements.
I'll second that.
Board President Oysterman. Aye. Director Case.
Aye.
Director Kilkenny.
Aye.
Director Ruggieri. Aye. Director Scheck.
Aye.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Should we have heard from the public?
All right.
We're good.
We're good. All right, so
Thankfully.
we are going to, thank you again, and you don't have
Thank
to
you, Michelle.
Okay.
stick around, you can leave.
Michelle, thank you very much. I
Drive
appreciate
safely.
your time.
Yeah, be
It's
safe.
dinner time, so I'm gonna go home and eat. Okay, bye.
Yeah, I appreciate working with you, Michelle, thank you.
All right,
Thanks for your help.
so we are moving back to the consent calendar, and we're gonna look at the draft minutes from the regular meeting, and then also the bills paid. Is there any questions from the board?
I have no questions.
Lisa, do you have any questions?
No questions.
I think my questions, I kind of sort of answered in my own brain, but I'm just gonna double check.
I'm sure you're right.
Yes, I know. It's sort of like I run my own department in the school district. 7118, that's part of what's going on out here?
Yeah, I call
Yes.
it about that.
Yes, okay. And then I was just curious, is the new tough shed also part of what's going, like, is that part of the recreation stuff?
No, the new tough shed was put out at the maintenance facility into the eastern courtyard.
Oh, okay.
And it's being used at storing lawnmowers and chainsaws
Gotcha,
and
okay.
weed whackers and other hand tools like that.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the multiple is because they have
Yeah.
it twice.
Exactly.
That was something exactly. All right, so then, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Do we do that?
You know, it's funny because when we had in-person meetings in the past, we never did roll call anything. It was just simply
Okay.
a verbal
It's,
vote.
and it's a tick now, after 3 years.
getting to
that
3 years.
I'm like,
Ro-
I'm at least turning and not looking on the screen for you.
Remote
Starting
meetings
now.
call for roll call votes.
Okay. All right, no
We're no
problem.
longer in a remote meeting, but if the
All right,
board would
So
like to
when
keep
we
doing
have to
roll call
approve
votes.
something, we don't do a roll?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anybody abstain?
All right,
And that's it.
but,
And then,
I did-
and then the board president
but
announces.
I did screw up. I would like to ask the public for a comment on the consent
We're
calendar.
gonna wait the
Sorry.
3 minutes?
No. Okay, now we can move on. I will read the public
you actually
comment.
We have to
You
vote.
do the vote.
Oh, let's do the vote. I thought we did.
We need to do the vote.
Oh.
You had a
All those
motion
in
from
I
favor?
did,
Bill, a
I
second
used the
from
motion,
Lisa.
oh, I called to vote.
Yes.
You had a motion from Bill,
Right.
a second from
All in
Lisa.
favor?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Say any opposed.
No.
Any opposed? Oh, I need to say it.
Yeah.
It's okay, we did it, it's okay.
Okay.
Look at
Couple more. We
I'm
got
gonna
2
get
more.
through this. Okay, sorry, everybody. It's an adjustment. All right, so.
Can I just
right-
make a quick suggestion? Can we let Chief White do his report early so the poor man can get back home before the bridge blows over?
I appreciate it, but about future consideration, but for today, I'm.
Okay.
I'm
He's
good.
like, I've been on the road for hours.
He's like, no, put me back in my car. Please, no, put me back in my car. For a minute.
Okay,
All
Is
right.
the eastbound lane open now?
Everything's been
Everything's
reopened,
open.
yes.
It's reopened.
okay. Technically, we are at public comment, open time for items not on the agenda, and speakers may comment only on non-agenda items within the subject matter of the jurisdiction of the district.
We did
We
that.
did this, okay.
Check.
So we're gonna move on to the first draft of the district operating budget of financial year 2023-2024 under district matters.
Great, thank you. Just to be very clear, I mean, this is, as it always is at this time of year, is a very beginning stage budget, just for the matter of pure transparency. We will have it on every board agenda, typically March, April, up until May, when it is adopted. There will be, I want to say significant, but several changes, not all of them will be significant, but there will be several changes throughout this as we continue to refine. A couple of the things that I have done with this budget so far, in terms of revenue, actually it's probably easier to talk about what I haven't done. The majority of the ad valorem taxes aren't in there. Rec department is still going through and finalizing their projections for all of summer camp and next year's years, so we will have those in soon. Things like rentals, the service contracts with CSA 13 and the county farm. All of those still need to be updated, so they will be as we get farther along here. Ideally, by next month, we'll have an 80% budget at the least. On the expenditure side, we still need to analyze part-time and seasonal staff wages, primarily associated with the rec programs, as well as contractors. I'm still waiting on some final information from for our property liability and workers' comp insurance. I still need to go through and kind of reanalyze all of our utilities, see that we're still trending in the right direction for that. I can tell you right now, PG&E is spiked like mad, so there's going to be some changes there, especially on the gas side. Although I did just hear that they're expecting a 75% decrease next month in gas costs, so yeah, I don't know. It would have been nice to have that 75% decrease when we started heating the pool, but it is what it is. Again, recreation program supplies services, we'll really look at capital expenditures. So for now, all of those items are at or very near last year's budget, which is actually the current year budget that we're in, so you won't see a lot of changes in that. And then, in looking at this budget, I have updated all of the kind of full-time staffing wages and staff-related costs in alignment with what our current pay schedule is for all of those people, as well as any census models if they have steps upcoming in the current year. So that has been updated. And then, trying to look at what else I have here. The one thing, as long as we're talking about staff, and I know that we've been kind of talking about this and just need to kind of get on it, is really having the board consider and implement a formal process by which salary schedule wages are reviewed on a regular basis for non-represented staff. Obviously, the represented staff have a right to formal negotiations, which we're getting ready to enter the third year of a 3-year MOU for. But the district has never really had a process by which to look at or analyze non-represented wages. So we certainly have some options there. It could even be broken off, say, into a little ad hoc subcommittee if there's a board member or two that would like to meet with myself, and I would probably ask Luke to join in, and we could kind of look at what types of processes would make sense, from comparables to CPI to district financial performance and so on. And this would be really kind of a good time to be looking at it, considering we have a pretty good idea how we're gonna perform this year, and you would recently have received the audit for the prior fiscal year, so you have a good sense of where we stand from a balance sheet perspective. I do have some notes just on things that I did within this budget. I don't feel I need to go through all of them. A couple things to point out as it currently stands. I'm still earmarking $100,000 to go towards the district's OPEB trust fund as a allocation every year, as well as $100,000 to go into the board designated reserves every year. That currently sits at $500,000 as of June of last year. And then I've just updated some of the stuff that we have in place and that we know, long-term debt, things with that. Obviously, Luke and Robin and I need to get together a little bit more on what type of rental revenue opportunities will exist, both for outdoors and for the facility, which wouldn't necessarily be going back to private rentals, but we do have people who rent the facility, like church groups and things like that, so we can actually start to incorporate a small line budget for that.
And that won't give us the amount of wear and tear that we were experiencing.
Yeah, well, and these groups don't really apply much
Okay.
wear and tear. I
Okay.
mean, they come in and do a little church group on a Sunday morning or something, so. But yes, we wouldn't lose money on that.
Okay.
I did move some things around on the rec side. We had been putting it in capital, but it's not really a capital, it's not something you would capitalize in terms of, every year we plan for and budget to do some concrete repair to the pool deck. That's not really an item that gets capitalized and depreciated, so I moved it out of that category and moved it into, land and building maintenance, which is where it seemed to make more sense. So you'll notice a jump in land and building maintenance, and that's primarily why. Again, I already talked about service contract revenue. That's something that I'll have very good estimates for, but doesn't actually get finalized until usually September or October, because it is dependent on how actuals perform at the end of this year, because that's rolled over into the following year with those contracts. And then the other thing I want to state is I know I have a bullet point here talking about the chief officer services agreement with Santa Fe. I actually met with Chief White and Deputy Chief Roman yesterday, had a very good meeting. That process is well underway. I think we have some good understandings on where we'll be with that, so I'll be able to kind of budget for that into there too, and how we'll be moving forward and keeping that, making sure we still have a very good fire chief leading the helm over there, so we're good. That said, that was kind of a lot to take in. But if there's any questions, thoughts, especially as we kind of lead in, I'm always happy to meet with anybody one-on-one too, if you ever wanted to swing by or give me a call. But the process is a pretty defined process on how we go through and put the budget together. So we'll be sitting down with staff, we'll look at all of our capital, we'll look at our capital planning that we kind of review every year, at least around this time. And then Luke and his team will, we'll all sit down and go through what they're projecting and looking at as far as summer camps and school year programs. So by the next meeting, we'll see some significant changes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's cycle. Anybody
Cycle.
have any questions or comments that they want to on the board? I would say that I agree with you that we should start the process of trying to figure out how to do evaluations and all, and with, in terms of pay raises and stuff, and I'm happy to be one of the board members if another board member wants to be on that with you and Luke. And welcome them, but I'm happy to be with you guys and get that going, because I don't want our staff to feel like they're being left behind.
Good. Well, I think it's just important to have a process in place, so they're aware of what the process
Yeah.
is, how often it happens, what the factors are. I wouldn't necessarily call it an evaluation, because I think that's a different
Sorry.
process
Sorry.
entirely,
Yeah.
but this is just a matter of looking at what your pay scales
Yeah.
are and ensuring that they're staying competitive while also affordable,
Yeah.
Would it be different than the structure we already have?
which is.
The chart that we did last, like,
And it would incorporate that kind of stuff. So, but what I'm saying is we would have a planned process and a planned timing so that we know that, say, every April, we're gonna go through that kind of a
Okay,
review
we have that,
and
yeah.
look at it. Or every, it's every 2 years or whatever. It's just right now, the process has always been when staff kind of brings it to the board's attention that, hey, we're really slipping behind, as opposed to having an expectation that we're gonna look at this at this time of year, every year. Here's the factors we're gonna look against, and it could be market comps to comparable positions at similar agencies. It could be CPI factors, consumer price index, inflation, as well as the district's ability to afford. So I guess that's what I'm looking at. But no, I actually thought that process and the information that was brought to the board last time was good. I would like to formalize it. I don't know if it's in a policy, but certainly in a formalized process that staff are very well aware of. Okay, they review every year at this time.
Right.
And management staff, Luke and myself would certainly come to, with recommendations as well.
I can work on that with you as well.
Okay, that'd be wonderful. Just loop us in
Okay.
and we'll get that going.
Great. Well,
All right.
we'll start setting some stuff up.
Can I just ask one quick question? I know this is like super draft. On page 3, capital outlay improvements, the budget, we're budgeting quite a bit more in 23-24. I just didn't know if that was for a specific item.
Yes, thank you for bringing that
Yeah,
up. So right now, what you are looking at, and I'm assuming you're talking about 5220910. So let me
Yes.
talk about 0916. That is first, which is underneath new equipment. That is primarily the amount that was budgeted this year for the playground renovation.
Okay.
There's some other little things that are thrown in there, but that's mostly what that is. And right now, I can tell you that's not going to get completed this fiscal year. The goal is to actually complete that after summer camp and everything ends. So that'll be a fun topic on the P&R agenda this coming month, just in terms of looking at the data and getting an RFP put together. We'll hopefully get that put out to bid within the next few months with a planned building time of September, October. Just so that way summer camp is done. And that was an item that was discussed. Timing was specifically discussed amongst P&R and staff, and we certainly agree that that is absolutely the best timing by which to do the project. And Luke did his due diligence in reaching out to multiple vendors just to gain some understanding on lead times needed from the time when a contract is awarded to the time they can actually have the equipment. It varies all across the board, but I think if we can get this out by May, early June for a September build, even as late as October, we'll be fine. Now, to answer your question on the jump here, yes, so the one item I did actually add so far to capital outlay that I think is important and really needs to get done is, and we've talked about this briefly, for the firehouse bunk room. For those of you who've never been in there, their bunk room is one room with pull-out beds that come out of the wall. They all kind of sleep in a dormitory style environment, which is okay. It's certainly non-compliant if and when we hire a female firefighter, and what we're looking at is building in just some non-structural, I don't want to call them fake walls, but I mean, they'll be sheetrock and everything. What's that?
cells.
Yeah, well, not cells, they won't be bars.
Don't.
But, basically creating 3 separate living quarters out of that one giant room. So we would remove the murky beds and create almost like little mini bedrooms in there. That'll be, with a door and close off, allow for a
Kind of like
level.
what we saw when we went to the community firehouse in Santa Fe next year.
It'll be nothing like what you've seen at the new
No, but
firehouses
like,
in Center
but
Fill.
like individual
bit.
bedrooms, like individual bedroom like things.
Individual dorm units,
Yes,
yes.
that's what I meant, not like so tricked out like they have there. We unfortunately don't have that budget, but yes,
It'll
that
help
is
the
like
privacy,
individual
right?
bedroom.
Please, Chief.
Right, no, I think the goal, as Eric indicated, is to ensure that it accounts for privacy. The days of everyone sleeping in a wide open space like this, they're very rare and seldom nowadays. Most of the time, there's usually some sort of partition that goes maybe all the way up to within a foot of the ceiling, or just completely all the way up to the ceiling now. And I think it's appropriate given the shifting dynamics in the fire service. So that includes also designating male and female and non-binary facilities, which is on the horizon as well. So there's a lot of changes, and he's seeking to make sure we're compliant in the event we do happen to hire a female firefighter, and/or I think maybe even some of the male firefighters would probably prefer to actually have some privacy, phone calls or anything else that may happen to occur in the privacy of their own dorm unit. So
Do we only have 3 on staff at one time? Is that
Typically,
where we're
yes.
3?
Yeah.
Is there room for 4?
I don't know. It's not that big of a room, and it's pretty rare that we have a 4th person staying there.
No, I started in COVID.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
We should probably
This is our
do
first
a-
meeting.
We should probably do a.
yeah, I can walk you through it at some point. I don't know that we need to arrange a field trip, but if you want to come and check it out
Oh, I love a
sometime.
field trip.
We could go through there, it does eliminate also the firehouse conference room. But the reason I put 60 is because, within our spending and bidding thresholds for public works, at 60 grand, you can direct deal. I have actually, so this wouldn't be something that'd have to go out to like even informal bidding. We would be able to just reach out to contractors directly. For the work I'm envisioning, I did have a contractor come in at one point in time and kind of looked, and he gave me some decent ideas about it. And he certainly thought that this type of work wouldn't require permitting. There's nothing permanent about it. There's nothing structural about it. This is just a matter of throwing a few walls and a few doors into a room. And that he believed that the work could definitely get done within that kind of a price range. That said, until you start really talking to people and they put in bids, unfortunately that contractor is no longer available to us. But we'll reach out through NBA and see if we can't contact a few other people just to come take a look and see if we can't get somebody to just even draw up some ideas for it really quick too, in terms of how they can lay out either one direction or the next and create the most usable space in it.
Give us.
Yeah, but that's why I put it at 60,000.
Thank you very much. I
Was
appreciate
mostly
that.
because if that, anything less than 60,000, we can direct deal directly with various, we'd still talk to multiple contractors, but it doesn't have to go through even an informal bidding process, which makes life a lot smoother, quicker, easier.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you for keeping us and asking that question.
Yeah.
All right, we are on to number 3 for district matters. The Cal OES resolution designating district manager to act as the applicant's agent on behalf of Marinwood CSD. Do you want to?
I can give you just 2 seconds on this. This is a ministerial move because we've applied for FEMA. We have this exact resolution on file with them, but it was passed more than 3 years ago now at this point. So it's just simply a matter of updating it. They require you update it every 3 years. I'll talk more about FEMA and that claim in my district manager report, but the district needs to designate an authorized agent, and that's typically been the district manager position.
All right.
I move to approve the Cal OES resolution designating a district manager to act as the applicant's agent on behalf of Marinwood CSD.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
And just for a point of record, it only gives you space to list 3 people. I listed Saban because she was the president. I listed Lisa because she's the vice president, and Bill was on it from the last. Bill was on it from the last time, so I just simply didn't take him off.
That's
He was
the
literally
difference-
in that
the
same
different-
line.
The different font, yeah.
Exactly.
You're like, I'm not even feeling
Congratulations.
this. Okay,
I
Alright.
am
So
totally
no
fine.
offense against Kathleen or Chris.
None taken.
all right,
Thank
and
you.
I guess we are now moving on to the district manager's report. Eric, you get to do a lot of talking today.
That's all right. Mainly, let's just start with these quick other items of note. The SDRMA Spring Education Day, this is a free little mini one-day conference. It happens in West Sacramento. It's really kind of geared around some of our insurance stuff, some geared towards P&L insurance needs or towards work comp insurance needs. But they do offer other full-day activities there. One is a safety specialist certificate program. I actually did that about 5 years ago. Robin Bruton, who's our assistant rec director, expressed some interest in doing it, so she's going to join and go through that program and get this certificate, which is good for either 2 or 3 years. And then Lisa, Director Ruggieri, wanted to come along, and her and I are going to attend the full-day Governance Foundations workshop put on by the Special District Leadership Academy. Beyond good learnings, this actually gives us a lot of different what's known as credit incentive points, which will then be applied as discounts towards both our property liability and our work comp insurance. So we'll get, just for going to the concert, having multiple staff, having a board person, as well as the safety certificate is its own category and gives you more points. So this will be a day well spent. We recently were contacted by the county and their sustainability manager, a woman named Dana Armanino, about an opportunity that's being sponsored through, I believe it's PG&E, to convert gas water heaters to all electric water heaters at absolutely zero cost to the district. I personally think that this is a great idea. Electric water heaters have come a long way. We have 3 water heaters, one that hits the bathrooms and the kitchen here, one that's for the pool area, and one that's in the firehouse. Unfortunately, it's not going to work out for the one that serves this building. They've already done a site, but they can certainly make it work for the pool as well as for the firehouse. This isn't like the little on-demand ones that go on the wall. This is actually a water tank that comes in, and given the price and instability of gas, I think that this is a good move, and again, it costs the district nothing and still comes with all the same warranties.
The pool itself or the pool bathroom?
The pool showers and bathrooms, not the pool itself.
Because that would save us too much money, and that would be too much good news.
Well, and Lou can speak better to this than I can, but I am not aware of any actual efficient or well-designed electric heaters for 200,000 gallon pools.
No. They don't exist yet.
And then the other thing I want to mention on that really quick that I don't have here, just yesterday, you all might recall a few months ago, I had asked the board to authorize spending so that we could become full members for a system known as CalOps. They reached out to me yesterday, said that they have opened it back up and sent me the paperwork, and so we're completing that, and we'll be CalOps members by the end of the month, which would be great.
Wonderful.
So we'll get out all of our, for the one fire position we have remaining. I know Robin's excited to use it for her positions. And it's just a great system, so.
Did they possibly tell you why? No, it's still a mystery. Okay, don't know.
Some digging, I think, led to understand, I think their HR director left. I think they had some other things, so they just kind of had to put that secondary piece on hold in
Okay.
terms of bringing in new people while they focused on managing the city, because it is run by the city of Foster City.
Okay,
But
so they have internal.
at the end of the day,
Okay.
I really don't care. Chief White can probably speak to this better because I know Senator Fell's a member, but for those who were members, there was no disruption of service. For all those agencies that were in it, they were still able to keep using it and posting it and accepting applications through it and everything. So I want to get in, and then we're in, because it is far and away a superior recruitment.
Okay, perfect. So,
Finally, FEMA claim and the Creek Bank failures. We're still doing a lot of work, just in terms of like preliminary work and investigations. We've actually recently had a land surveyor come out. He's already completed a complete survey across the creek, through the creek, all the way up to the pool house building, down to the bridge, everything, elevations, the work. So we have a relevant recent topographic survey for that, which is what they need to actually be able to design the repairs. hydrological engineer we brought on, Matt Smeltzer, has been incredible, and he's making sure that we're moving forward with what we need to do. He's already been in touch with the county, and the civil engineer, Eric Devanian, with Miller Pacific, has certainly been working, but there was little he could do until he had that survey done. And even with Matt's work, he really needs the water to come down more, and right now, if you've been out to the creek, it's back up to mid-January levels, so took a quick peek at it today. It's hard to tell, but I don't think there's been any adverse movement to the land. It's all covered. All the emergency protective measures we could take have been taken, and I think we're moving as quickly as we can in looking at the repairs. Next steps are on that level are going to be just kind of engaging and contracting with various environmental consultants, because we're certainly going to have some of the environmental work done on this as well, and they're going to have to do field surveys, so on and so forth, but the water levels are just much too high for any of that to happen at this point in time. All of that said, I did submit what's known as a request for public assistance to FEMA. The request has been accepted. We have been, doesn't mean the claim has been accepted. The request has been accepted. We've been assigned a representative from FEMA. Just last week, I attended what turned out to be a 4.5-hour applicant briefing at the county Emergency Operations Center. Most agencies in Marin County were there. There's Quinn Gardner, who is the Emergency Services Director for the city of San Rafael, was there. A lot of the cities and other agencies were there. It was a long day, but it was informative. I had a chance to talk to a couple of direct representatives, kind of explaining what our situation was. Even had one of them come out to the site afterward, later in the afternoon, from Cal OES, whose job really is to, they kind of serve as the liaison between the federal aspect of this, FEMA, and the individual applicants. And Cal OES is just, they're incredibly supportive, and I think they kind of see it as their job to help you make sure your claim gets accepted and the funding obligated for it. We actually have a meeting this Friday with representatives from FEMA and Cal OES. I'll be attending. I think Luke's going to sit in if he's available. And Matt Smeltzer, who is working on a lot of the environmental and some of the other work, and has a good, can describe the damage much better than I can, has also said he'll come and join for that meeting too, which is great. The goal of this meeting is really to separate and identify the very specific projects that you have that are needed to repair, and then to start to create damage descriptions, which is why I really wanted Matt Smeltzer there, because he can speak much better to the technical bank failures and the geologic activity that happened and everything else. So I want to make sure, because the one thing with these processes is once you sign off on what the damage description is, you can't change that. You can change scope of work needed, you can change other things, but the damage description, once it's set, it's set. So I want his input on that to make sure that we are capturing everything possible. The OES person seemed fairly optimistic that this would be a claim that they would accept, especially given that we had water intrusion coming into the pool pump house and down into the lower pits and everything, so that directly impacted a facility. And that's kind of the biggest part of FEMA accepting this, that it's not just something that happened in natural environment, but no damage to actual facilities and improvements. We did have that, not nearly enough to warrant closing down the facility or putting it in an unsafe condition, but it has to be addressed, because another big thing like this happens and that facility is going to be in trouble. So we will keep you apprised as we go through that. It's going to be a while before we know if FEMA is going to accept this, but at the end of the day, the work has to be done, whether FEMA accepts it or not. So we're kind of moving in two different tracks, which is why it's great to have Matt. He's helping keep the projects themselves moving, and that allows me to focus more of my attention on just the FEMA application side, because that is an arduous process in its own right, especially even considering our project is, for us, large, for them, small.
Great. Anybody have any questions for Eric?
Thank you very much, appreciate all the hard work.
Thank you.
I have a question. So, as you know, we mentioned that the application process is now in place with FEMA. Now, would FEMA have certain vendors that they would require us to utilize the
No,
project?
no, they have a bidding process that they require you to utilize, and it's basically identical to the bidding process we already have, which, has to go through formal kind of sealed, anything that the law requires, and then you also have to show that it's been offered to minority and women-owned businesses, but by putting it through the agencies that we put it through, we take care of that too. So, yes, it does have to go through a very specific process, and then they want to know what our policy is, and I was telling them that we've actually adopted what's known as CUPCA, the California Uniform Public Construction Cost Act, which is where the thresholds are set as to direct, informal, formal bidding. And this is all going to fall under formal bidding. There's no aspect of this project that's going to fall underneath that $212,500 mark. Consultants don't account for that. And things like engineers and stuff. This is when you're bidding out the actual work.
Yeah, if we're having two kind of concurrent processes, just want to make sure that we're being compliant for any funding.
Oh, yeah.
like that.
Oh, yeah, no. We don't want to ruin, yeah. Yeah, we'll be on top of all that.
Any other? All right, thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for being on top of it and going to long meetings for us. All right, moving on to fire department matters. Chief, we're in person.
Yes, we are, almost 3 years. Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you in person for the first time. Sorry I was late. I got caught up behind the rail crossing guard that, for whatever reason, was intermittently operating, and then the train finally came about 5 minutes later, and then it started acting up even after the train went by. So I just went, okay, I'm going to be a little bit late today. That's just what it is. But it's good to be here with you.
come up with a better story.
It's true.
There was an emergency, there was,
Well, it was overturned truck on the bridge. Oh.
Delivered a baby at the wheel.
All right. Well, I'll start my report with Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority and Vegetation Management Projects. According to Mark Brown, the Executive Director of Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, the application period for low-income senior homeowner exemptions expires on June 30th. So I want to make sure that we're getting the word out via the link that's included here in the report. So individuals who would potentially qualify for direct assistance or grant funding are aware of that opportunity. Some of the board actions for the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority Board, which I believe is meeting again this Thursday afternoon. They recently approved a conflict of interest code amendment, approved rental office space for what's considered an expanding defensible space inspector consortium. I think the goal is to try to ensure that they're bringing in as many defensible space inspection staff and making sure they're aligning all their standard activities throughout the county as opposed to independent activity happening among different organizations. And so more to follow on that. And the planning process for 23-24 is underway. In fact, Dan Prelock just sent something out again this afternoon expanding or increasing the deadline for March 15th for initial draft project presentations until March 20th. So there's quite a bit there. I'm sure she's inundated, and that may have a little bit to do with her allowing a few more project days for submission, but also I'm sure the weather and the storming has some impact on that as well. Completed work. In January of this year, somehow or another, with all the rain, there was still some roadside vegetation work that was able to be completed on Windstone Drive and Blackstone Drive with the purpose of removing fire hazardous plants, including juniper. The goal was to reduce ignition potential by removing that juniper. Excuse me. There appears to be about 20 acres of work that's going to be done in open space with grazing and other activities between May and July this year. Those timelines may need to adjust a little bit given all of the rain we're receiving and whether or not the goats are going to be ready to eat still very moist fuels. I'm not so sure about that. We'll see. Additional work. I know we've talked about this in the past. The Miller Creek School District and some of the areas around the school. Finally, I think the work is going to get underway. Zones will be created behind the homes along Heatherstone Drive, Johnstone Drive, and Blackstone Drive that abut the Grasshopper Hill open space areas. And so crews have identified that in the past as an area where they believe they can get effective project work done to minimize and reduce risk in that area. And so glad to see that's finally taking place. They believe the work's gonna occur sometime in April. Again, given the weather, I'm not so sure that that's a ideal timeline, but we'll see what happens. It could very well still be that they start some preliminary work in April.
Chief, can I jump in really quick?
Absolutely.
The April, we were really looking at a very specific week in April for the work that's happening over by the middle school because they will be on spring break. And some of the work is pretty close to some of the classrooms, so we were trying to disrupt, the district's been great about working with us and allowing us access, but we were trying to disrupt the school as little as possible. So to the chief's point, hopefully we are able to stick with that plan. Otherwise, we might have to do some workarounds on when we do certain parts of that work so as not to disrupt the school while it's in session.
The teachers at Mill Creek, thank you.
The parents at Miller Creek, thank you.
All righty. In alignment with some of the work that's already been completed in January, there's gonna be now some removal of juniper and other hazardous species in the medians and parking strips, as identified in phase 2 of this year's roadside vegetation management project. That work was slated to begin towards the end of this month. I'm not quite sure again if that's gonna end up being the situation. We'll see. I hear there's some sunny days ahead, but I keep hearing that and then I don't experience it, so we'll see.
Can I ask a question? When
Sure.
it says other hazardous, is it only plants that will catch, well, I know all plants catch fire, so let me know that first, but ones that like juniper, or can you also do big ones that are in ways of sites for safety as well?
I think the goal is to ensure that if they see something that's a potential laddering fuel, as an example, something that's a surface fuel that might catch some low-hanging limbs, they'll address the surface fuel and those low-hanging limbs to make sure there's no laddering capability. So that's work that happens regardless of species, I believe, just to ensure that we don't have fire communicating from the ground all the way to the grounds. As far as other species removal, I think they're being very selective and very deliberate about the types of species to ensure that it's in alignment with what's been communicated to the community already. As an example, I don't see a lot of work taking place with eucalyptus, which I kind of find surprising.
I wasn't going there though.
Well, I live in a
I was
community.
gonna ask,
where
I'm
there's a
just
lot
saying,
of
that wasn't the one
eucalyptus.
that I was going with, but.
Right, and so I live in a community where there's a lot of eucalyptus, and that's one of the species that they certainly want to address. But the focus here has been on the tiger, cypress, acacia, juniper, other species that have high oil content as well. That may expand and change at some point. I'm just not sure if it's a priority right now. So, yeah.
I was more hoping that they would take out a lot of bushes, so it's better for the drivers and the kids along Miller Creek. That's what I was hoping.
So if you can give me some photographs of those areas that you're concerned about, and then whether they're on private property or on.
No, they're in the
on
median.
Yeah, if you can give me some of that information, there
They're right
could
by
be already
Chris's
an
house.
intention on that, I'm not sure, so.
They're right by his house, he'd be glad to do that. Designated.
Okay,
You'll be getting, you'll get lots of pictures and press.
nice,
Some
Thank
yearbook
you.
photos.
all right,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Moving on to COVID-19, on Tuesday, February 28th, the governor officially ended the emergency state declaration involving COVID-19, and that's after almost 3 years. The unfortunate reality is California experienced over 100,000 deaths. I think we were very fortunate in this county, if I'm not mistaken, we were below roughly 300 deaths, which is just phenomenal. But that was a lot in part due to the very proactive stance that everyone in the county took. In fact, for a long time, we were leading the charge in the number of percentage of individuals who were actually receiving vaccinations and boosters. That being said, the death rate was very considerable. It's still 340 deaths as of the time of this report per day in the United States as a whole. But if you look at it compared to what it was in 2020, 2021, and 2022, roughly 2,200, 3,300, and 2,400 deaths a day for each of those years at the same time each year. So that it shows that things were really at a very frenzied pace, and a lot of folks were at risk. That's no longer the case right now. Even an estimated 9 out of 10 Americans, including yours truly, have now experienced COVID at least once. Thought I was impervious to it because I went almost 3 years without getting it, and suddenly I wasn't. So wake-up call. That being said, I believe the federal government is moving sometime in May, I think May 11th, to actually end their declaration as well. And with that, there's going to be some changes with how the health maintenance organizations and others are actually addressing bringing forward COVID testing without charge, as an example. The home kits, all of those things will start to shift and become something that's not sponsored directly or provided for free from the federal or state. So more to follow on that. I gotta say though, but I recall when this was all starting to become an issue, before there was actually a real shutdown, saw Governor Newsom and Mayor London Breed take what I thought were really unusual steps to stand up emergency management efforts and Office of Emergency Management very early. And I was told later by some folks that may or may not really have the inside information that Mayor London Breed received some images and photos of what was taking place in Wuhan, China, and other locations where COVID was running rampant. And they knew that being on the Pacific Rim, that was going to be a potential destination for a lot of folks that were infected with COVID. And so they took a very proactive stance. And I think that proactive stance certainly reduced the number of deaths we may have been confronted with here in the state. Add to that the Super Bowl. If the Niners had won the Super Bowl against Kansas City that year, the celebration in Silicon Valley, which was the hotbed for COVID initially, would have also been, I think, something very problematic for the state and maybe for the region as a whole. So we just got very fortunate that people took immediate action, and then some other things where there would have been large gatherings of folks actually did not occur to the scale that they could have. So with that being said, I don't know that I'm going to provide very much more on COVID in our monthly reports because things have kind of dwindled down. There's not a lot of information being shared at this point. But I will just say and encourage, much like President Oysterman, masking up is not really a bad thing, especially if you're going to be in large crowds. COVID is still infecting folks. We've had people still in San Rafael Fire Department, as an example, who are being infected with COVID or having family members infected with COVID. And we just want to do our due diligence if we're going to be around anyone vulnerable to ensure that since vaccination and boosting is not really taking place on the same scale it was before, that we try to do what we can to protect those individuals, whether they're very young or the elderly. I think that's just a prudent thing to consider. So unless there's some future requests for COVID items, I think I'm going to start, like I said, scaling back and or eliminating the report on COVID.
I think that we agree with that. Hopefully, we will not have an additional new pandemic
Yes.
that you have to give us information about.
I hope that never happens again in the history of humankind. That just, it's one thing to have it happen every 100 years, but it's devastating, and I hope we can get ahead of things with the World Health Organization and the others who really study and try to get ahead of these things, and when they see them develop, do some immediate intervention and contain it. But that also involves world politics and domestic politics and other things that we have no control over sometimes. So we'll see. We'll see. Let's hope. Celebration of life, services for retired and ill member Paul Crimmins, who worked in Marinwood for several years before moving over to the San Rafael Fire Department. Chief Crimmins was well regarded and well respected by everyone, including me. And I didn't really have the opportunity to know Chief Crimmins or work alongside him, but he was one of the first people that reached out to me when I joined the San Rafael and Marinwood Fire Departments, and I was very surprised to learn about his plight and how he took the time to reach out to me while he was facing a very grave disease and surgeries and everything else. But that was the kind of individual he was. He was very, how can I put it, compassionate, energetic, optimistic on a scale that I've only seen in maybe a couple of other people. I mean, you can see from his text messages, he was not getting down on himself despite what his reality was. And so he taught me some valuable lessons that only my father, who had passed from cancer when I was about 30 years old, taught me, watching him as he went through a disease that was slow progressing. And so I learned a lot from Paul Crimmins in a short period of time. I had the opportunity to go visit with him, and I told him, I said, if I'm lucky enough to get to where you are, we're going to have some more conversations and keep this friendship going. So what I meant by that, I'm assuming he's heading that way. So given that, I'm hopeful that I'm arriving somewhere in that same direction, but we'll see.
Assuming you're going that way.
That's why I said, that's why I said I hope. So, given that, it was a great ceremony that was held here at the Marinwood Community Center around noon on February 20th. And I estimate at least 200 to 300 people that were there, including State Assembly Member Damon Conley, members from the community, members from retirees, active members, and we had Marin County fire chiefs and their agencies all agreed to help cover in for us so we could all be here to participate on duty or off duty. And so it was just well attended, and special thanks to John Bagala, who has a lot of history here, Jeff Conover, Kenny Martin, Ryan Brackett, Eric, who assisted, Battalion Chief Kyle Hamilton, and others who really made this a memorable event. And I hope the family received it well. I think they did. But just to see the folks in attendance and hear stories from his family, it was very touching to learn even more about Paul that I didn't know. Like, he was a martial artist. You know, he was a very quiet, slight, unassuming guy. Could probably kick behind and take names if he had to. You would never have known that about him, right? So given that, I wanted to again acknowledge that we were able to have a very great send-off for Chief Crimmins. And then last but not least, you know the routine, you know what I say every month. Our members have come in sub 6 minutes, as usual. And that's just a testament to their willingness to know their districts, to get out the door quickly and get on scene to provide the help that they're able to provide to anyone in need. And so I continue to just marvel at this, and they set the standard for others. I've told you, many times I've seen numbers that far surpass this, and it's problematic. It is. But it's for different reasons, and we try to correct those individuals who haven't really landed and arrived with the mindset of getting out of the door, getting on the rig, and getting a route, and how important that is. So I'm considered a dinosaur in the fire service, but I think some of those old traditions and that old understanding is still needed for the youth, and I'm going to continue to emphasize and press those things. And if they start slipping, I'll be right there to catch them and move them in the right direction. But so far, so good. They're self-motivated. They can take care of business. So you can be proud of Engine 58 and the crews here. And that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We are proud of our guys, and thank you for being present, and Eric for helping out.
I really didn't do much of anything. I would certainly
Well, for
Carolyn
Paul-
and the
for
rest
Paul,
crew, and just
yeah.
making sure the building was ready for them, so I would deflect any credit towards that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you to our staff, and I was planning on coming, but I got COVID.
Oh, no.
I am negative, I wouldn't be here, but I wanted to just say our thanks as a board to somebody who had served our fire department and the surrounding areas, and it's not just their service, it's their family service, and we appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions for Chief White? No?
I do, but I don't know if I can really ask it. In Santa Fel.
But I'm gonna anyways.
I heard that a car ran into a building and the fire department had to shut down the street. Is that true?
When was that?
I don't know, like mid last week, because it's only Tuesday.
I didn't hear that,
Okay.
but it's possible that it did occur.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what I'll do, or I would do if I was an incident commander, and it all really depends on whether or not there was some structural integrity issues with the
Gotcha.
building, or if there was some power lines or something else that was a real issue, and we knew thoroughfare traffic would be a problem, then we would probably reroute traffic until we could secure the power and or ensure the integrity of the building.
It was right on A. That's why.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't hear about that incident, but I'm gonna be honest,
But
there's
now he's gonna
incidents
go
I don't
find
get to
out,
hear about. Now I have a deputy chief that actually funnels to the deputy, and he handles them at his level, in most cases. And actually, the battalion chiefs usually handle a lot at their level without even involving the deputy chief. So,
I just walk by the building like every day.
and the street was cordoned off, or?
A was by the,
Okay.
down the street from
That
Mission.
was construction. That was Friday.
No.
Okay, well, we can
Doesn't matter.
talk about
Oh,
it
okay.
later. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, you can't ask that question.
All right. Well, thank you, Chief.
Next time I'll
Thank you very much.
If you'd like to not get back in the car, you can hang out, but otherwise,
I'm
you
sorry?
know, I said, if you don't wanna get back in the car yet, you can hang out with us, but otherwise, we'll see you later.
You know, my son's been texting me, I wanted
Oh.
to say goodnight to him. and-
Yeah, go,
Yeah,
go.
but thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Coffee on the way.
Thanks,
Well, you know what, I'm not a coffee guy, but, and I've been trying to get away from frappuccinos, because those kind of. Oh, you too, huh? Nice. You guys take care.
All right, take care.
Good night, Chief. All right, so moving on to Park and Recreation Matters, looking at number 1, the appointment of a new Park and Rec Commissioner for the term ending December 31st. And did you want to say something?
Yeah, I would just say I met with Angela. She actually came as a referral from another one of the Park and Rec Commissioners. She's a Marinwood resident, born and raised for the most part, had moved out for a brief period of time and has moved back in with her family, lives locally here. Certainly seemed to understand what the role was about, what the commission is to do, and was excited to get involved. She was a little disappointed in that the next commission meeting is scheduled for March 28th, and she already has a plan out of town, so she won't be able to sit until May. But she did submit her letter, it's included in the packet, and I think she would be a fine commissioner.
I agree. Can I appoint her?
Mhm.
Do I make a motion? Do I?
Can I hear a motion?
May I make a motion to approve Angela Bliss Steiner to join the Park and Rec Commission as, thank you.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
That brings it up to 5 full regular commissioners, so the only vacancy would be for an alternate commissioner on that commission at this point.
And she's gonna be great. She's so smart and so in the neighborhood. It's gonna be fantastic.
Sure it is.
Yeah.
She's okay.
She lives across the street from,
She grew up 2 doors down from me.
Can't believe this is being recorded. Okay.
She would expect nothing less.
Oh, okay. All right, moving on to number 2, the Miller Creek Trail Initiative, authorization to engage independent consultants to perform required biological and cultural studies. And Eric.
Yeah, I gave you guys a brief staff report on this. Just want to be very clear that this doesn't commit the district to the project at all, but you can't move forward in this project in any shape from where we are now without going through these studies. Right there?
Yeah, I'm supposed to.
Yeah, this is just these are the environmental studies, these are things that you would have to do based on people who know more about this than I do. We think that these are actually going to turn up with no real findings and no impacts to building the trail that we want to build, but if they have an independent person go through and do the assessments, these numbers come from actual proposals that I've received. And the cultural is, right around what we spent for the cultural assessment when we had to do that for the maintenance facility. But all of that needs to go through, and if there are no impacts, large or small, and nothing that requires any level of mitigation, then we would be able to file a notice of exemption on this project from CEQA, stating that there are no environmental impacts identified, and use those studies as backup for it.
Anybody have any questions?
So no matter what happens, these need to be done regardless.
Yeah,
It's better to do
yes.
it so we have some information to tell the public, because the questions are gonna come up anyways.
Well, of course it's gonna come up, because, but you left already, so.
Well, other people in the community.
Well, when we start to do public outreach, the
Yeah.
findings from these surveys would certainly be incorporated into that public communication, because those would also be some of the questions, is it gonna disturb plant life? Is there any sensitive species? Is it gonna disturb any wildlife patterns or nesting birds? So that's what these studies tell you. At this point, there's nowhere else to move forward on this project. The one thing I will say, especially with the botanical assessment, is typically springtime is when you want to be doing those, because that's when plants start to come into bloom, and that's when they would want to perform that assessment so that they can give you an accurate representation if there's any special species in the area where we're planning for this trail. In total, you're looking at about $6,500 to $8,000 to have the studies produced with written reports.
I just would love to find out what the cultural study would be consisting of.
Like what the study looks for?
Yeah,
They look for a few different things. One is they'll actually go through databases. Boy, don't quote me on what the Native American Heritage Database, which actually has a lot of sites plotted and knows where there's various shell mounds or artifacts that are found or things like that. We actually have a very significant site right here on Miller Creek, right next to the thing that's a Minden that was discovered. It's all fenced off there. They don't promote it, they don't publicize it because they don't want anybody near it, to be honest with you. But they'll go through those databases and then they'll come out and they'll physically explore the area to find any evidence of it. Same thing that they did for the maintenance facility, but they'll traverse the whole track of where we're at and they'll look into all the database and info that's readily available to them.
And the wildlife assessment, I'm just clarifying, would look at wildlife travel patterns, you know, like corridors and things like that to make sure that we're not cutting anything off.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, nesting birds, things along those lines.
Right, yeah. There's,
No
A
frogs,
lot
no
back there,
birds,
yeah.
no anything sensitive,
yeah, I'm thinking of larger mammals moving from one side, one
Yeah.
place to the other.
Chupacabras.
Yeah,
There's some beautiful deer back there,
Yeah.
incredible.
yeah.
And is there a reason why we're moving forward when we're not 100% sure we're going to do this trail? And we have the big project, not knowing if FEMA's gonna approve the damage?
Mostly on this right now is timing. If this isn't done now, you're gonna push it back a year. Because yes, you need to do the botanical around this time of year coming up shortly. And a project that's got $150,000 of seed money already into it before looking for any other grants. I would personally, my recommendation is to move forward with this, allow this to help inform any final decisions as to whether this is a go, no-go beyond just a financial look or a maintenance look, but also are there any environmental impacts? I mean, these might come back stating massive environmental impacts, at which point it's gonna make the decision for you.
Right.
I don't think they will, but I'm not a biologist.
Well, and then, at least we know now versus next year, let's say we decide we definitely want to move forward and we've missed the window, we would have to wait another year. And as we know, costs go up every year, so.
Well, I don't think we could really make a decision about even
Anything.
wanting to move forward or not without having this
Is
information.
that right?
Yeah, it's kind of some
Well, that's what I'm
foundation.
saying, you would need, let's say next April, we decided we did want to move forward, because I'm not sure we would be in time to get
Right.
those things done. So we need kind of,
Sorry.
I don't know if we need a book ahead of time or what, so just by approving now, it means not necessarily that it's gonna be done at this instant, but it's gonna be done, we'll get the information, and we can sit on the information and digest it and figure out if it's gonna work for us, right?
Right, and the studies don't have like an expiration date, so we could
No.
get these done now, and then even if we didn't do the project for another couple.
Yeah, there are certain other things that even prior to construction, you still need to do, like you need to do things like a nesting bird survey if you're doing any construction during nesting service season, which is relatively cheap and easy. You know, people who are certified come out, they look for nestings and things like that, of especially any protected species, spotted owls, things along those lines.
Okay.
So you still gotta do that, but that's not what this is. That is a time and place survey versus an overall assessment.
Okay, and I've been bad and I haven't asked for public comment, even though there's nobody in here, there's no public, but I do need to ask, and I was bad and I did do that with the chief. All right, is there,
I would move that we approve the authorization to engage independent consultants to perform required biological and cultural studies for the Middle Creek Trail Initiative.
I'll second.
You decide to think,
We should go.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion passes with one opposed, one opposition. All right, moving on to recreation park maintenance activity report. Go ahead, Luke.
Thank you.
Nice to
So
see you in person.
it's nice to see all of you in person. It's been, how long now? 3 years?
I don't know.
When was
Friday?
the wine? When was the wine? I'm like, when was the wine thing?
Well, our meeting in person, I see
Yes,
Luke all the
yes,
time.
in this lovely format. Thank you. Yeah, so the big news this week, we opened up summer camp registration and swim lessons registration for Marinwood residents yesterday. And we will open up for non-residents or the rest of the public on Thursday this week. So that's gone really well. We had, coming in, it's hard to know if we're gonna have a line out the door and how everything's gonna work, but the staff thankfully were very thorough in going through everything and making sure all of our registration links were working and all the information was correct and that everything was gonna be okay. And it was a relatively mild day in terms of staff needing to interact with the public. So people were able to get online, get their camps, get their swim lessons, and it all went very smoothly. Even though Carolyn's computer decided to do a massive update in the hour before and said, it will restart several times this morning. And it was about 98% done like when we opened up. So everything went great. And the big day is going to be Thursday when the rest of the world comes and tries to get in. So so far that's been going really strong, and enrollment looks really solid compared to previous years of the resident part of that. So we're encouraged by that and are expecting it to be a really busy registration next couple of weeks and months. So, but that's what we're hoping for. So. And that includes, we've had a lot of people buying pool memberships, signing up for swim lessons, enrolling in our CIT program, our guards and training program, and so yeah, all across the board, it seems like there's a lot of interest.
When are those due?
The CIT applications are not due until the end of April, so we've got a lot of time on that. It's a lot of homework.
And then can I just ask a general question on camp registration?
Yeah.
Because you split it, does any camp sell out for just
Not historically and not so far. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there are some groups like the age group, kindergarten through like second grade tends to be the most popular demographic for camps, and we have a lot of options for those camps.
Nice.
Right now, second grade camps are the most popular this first couple of days, but nothing's full. So
Okay.
there will be spots going into Thursday
Good to know.
for everything.
It was only during COVID when we're doing like a tenth of what we could do, right?
Right, yeah, things are back up to normal, enrollment numbers last year and this year. The last, I guess that was a week and a half ago, was our 12th annual Raise a Glass wine tasting event, and that took place on Saturday, March 4th. It was a great time. We had 14 wineries from Sonoma, Napa, and Marin doing wine tasting. We had a new band performing some live music, which was really good. And yeah, it was a great turnout. We had a really good event. We're really excited about it. Our next community event will be our Spring Art Show, which takes place on April 22nd, Saturday from 3 to 7. So please everyone make it to that. We've got a lot of good artwork in store for that, so that should be a lot of fun. The pool opened for the Marinwood Water Devils on March 1st for their splash week, kind of a week for new swimmers to check it out. And I think the full team was on Friday that week.
Full team. We did a pool party on Friday.
Pool party on Friday, and then regular practice started this week, and with.
I guess regular practice was
last week, and then last week, and then we've got second. I guess it's been the second week of practice. We did have a couple cancellations.
Yeah, a little bit of a false start with the weather.
Yeah, with the weather. But last week was off to a great start as far as from our point of view.
Absolutely. It's been great.
It's been great seeing the swimmers and having the coaches back on the deck, and
the
so.
swimmers have been thrilled with the pools, I think.
Yeah.
What's that?
The swimmers are thrilled with the pool.
Oh, yeah.
The temperature, the clarity.
Yeah, everything's up and running, and it's good to get that get everything prepped, and we'll be open to the general public on Monday, April 3rd. And so we got a few more things to do down there, but overall we're thrilled to see the swim team back in the facility. It's been going great. And there's one note, we mentioned the slide, as Eric talked about in his report. We are optimistic that the area that's been compromised back behind the pump house and behind our picnic area will, as of now, not affect any of our operations or our rentals or ability to run the pool season as normal. We did lose some real estate back there, and there's some areas that definitely, we're gonna keep an eye on, and things, things could change during this weather, but as of right now, our plan going forward for the pool season, we'll be able to run everything normally. The only thing that's a question is looking at when the construction does begin later, most likely in the summer, we'll need to make accommodations for how and where access will take place. So, but as of right now, we don't make plans to cut off programs or limit what we're doing, but we'll definitely update the board if that changes. So we're optimistic about that. And then one thing, so we have some new spring classes start in this last couple of weeks that have been going really well. We have a new watercolor painting class for adults, and we've got a new martial arts style class for kids called White Crane Salot, which is nice in the Kung Fu family of martial arts programs. It's actually got a lot of enrollments going really well. But one sad note, one of our longtime instructors, Duncan McSwain, who taught a photography class for us for, I think since 2014, I'll have to double check when he passed away in February, on February 18th. And he was, I think, 87 or 88, and but he has taught a photography class for us, I think, twice a year for the last 8 or 9 years, and was a wonderful instructor and a good friend of the recreation department. So, so we were really excited to hear about his loss, and we will definitely miss him and miss his program. They put a really nice obituary in the Marine IJ. So if you look that up, he had a fascinating life story that I knew very little of, and it's one of those things that you wish you'd been able to talk about that stuff. But yeah, Duncan, a funny thing I shared with his daughter when they're potentially going to do a service for him here. That hasn't been announced yet, but as soon as we know, we'll put information out. But later this spring. But I was looking for a photography class to offer. I thought it'd be a cool thing for the community and that people would like. And I reached out to a few different avenues to try to find someone to come teach. And I hadn't gotten any traction. And then completely unrelated to that, Duncan came in and asked to talk to whoever's in charge of classes. And he said, I'd like to offer a photography class to your community. And I said, that's great. Did you see my ad? Or I have no idea what you're talking about. It was just one of those happenstance things that he waltzed in and ran a great class every spring and fall for all those years. So we became good friends, and we're definitely going to miss him. So just wanted to note that, and we'll definitely let you guys know when his service is planned, and we'll try to make it for sure. But the other classes are all going really well, and we're feeling good about our spring offering of adult and youth programs. And then the other staff have just been busy getting ready for summer and ready for the pool season. Robin and John Paul have been conducting just countless interviews for seasonal staff and getting all that put together and doing a lot of preparation, scheduling, and planning. And we're really excited for both the kind of pool season as well as the summer camp season. So that's what's going on for the rec department. The parks department, things have been wet and windy. I think today, as Devon told me, he's like, I don't think I've never been so wet as I was today. The rain was just coming up sideways and all which ways. But staff have been out monitoring the district, the culverts and the creek, the roof, the facilities. We had 2 different down trees that we handled in the last few days. One fell from the creek over the bridge to Miller Creek. That blocked that, and thankfully didn't do any structural damage, just like one little post on the bridge had to be replaced, but they had to cut that off. And then there was a tree down on a Horn Trail blocking the trail that they dealt with yesterday. So we haven't really been hit too hard with the storms. Knock on wood, as Tiffany likes to do, but staff have been out just monitoring all the different areas and the trailheads and different things and dealing with things as they come up. We continue to provide sandbags for the public out in the parking lot. We have, one of the days that we've had clear weather, have been out doing some erosion control in some of the spots that we've been dealing with the last few years. Primarily, there's this area down near the mini park where we've seen some erosion. There's the area over here, just past the north of the playground, and then the area by the top pool that we've been focusing on this last couple of years and continue to focus on. Those areas so far are doing okay, and the efforts that we've put into that seem to be helping. If we continue to get these atmospheric rivers and storms, time will tell, what things look like after that. But as of right now, it looks like the efforts have been fruitful, and we continue to monitor and work on those as time allows. Staff have also been busy trying to get the pool prepped for the pool season. We had some concrete repairs performed last month. We've got some drains in the pool that are due to be replaced this month. That should be in the next couple weeks, which our staff doesn't perform. We bring somebody into a diver, comes down and just put some new drains in. It's not a big deal, but every like 5 years we have to replace some of those. And they took some of the tables and benches down to the shop to sand and refinish, and so those will be looking new for the pool season. Just to make sure all the equipment's ready to go. So that's all I wanted to really touch on. Please let me know if anyone has any questions about the rec or parks maintenance
I just want to make a statement. They took benches and picnic tables into our new facility, and they are able to do it while we're having an atmospheric river outside, because previously they did not have room to do these sorts of things.
That is
if it was
exactly
not
right.
raining.
Yeah, no, it's been great to have a space to actually work and do things while it's raining out and stay dry and warm, and so it actually has been a really nice blessing. So exactly.
Sorry, I had to highlight that statement. You just kind of like snuck it in there. I was like, wait.
No, it's worth noting, and I just to double down on that. Yeah, it has been really wonderful to have a facility to do work in. It's dry, it's heated, it's well lit. I can park the vehicles in. They're not going onto a soaking wet, utility vehicle every morning that's like saturated from the night before, and the gear is going to be in much better condition moving forward for being able to be housed under cover and in a good area. So it's been really nice to have a rainy season and having moved in before that all started. It's been really nice.
Is there any update on the removal of the shipping containers and the fencing and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we have been working on finding buyers for those containers, and I believe we do have some interested parties in those. I'm optimistic that we'll have those out of there in the next month, hopefully sooner. But that's just making sure we get that locked in and get someone to transport them, and that's something's going to be tricky scheduling, people to move equipment that's that big, and I definitely will not want to do that depending on the condition of the park in terms of how wet it is, because those are super heavy. But we'll make sure that we are making progress on that, and we have some interested people. So I foresee us getting the containers out of there and the fencing down, and we'll start rehabilitating that area of the park, I think, within the next month or so.
Okay.
I'll definitely update you guys next month.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
I also talked to somebody at Marin Builders Association to see if they can help potentially just let their members know that, hey, we've got these two customized, because, they're perfect for courtyards and things like that.
Okay,
So,
cool.
yeah. But you always have people, oh yeah, I definitely am interested, I'll follow up with you, and, they're gone.
Right.
Yeah, I've had a few of those conversations.
Yes.
But no, that's a priority.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you guys. Thank you and your staff.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, thank you to everybody for getting the pool going, for erosion work, for being out in the rain while all of us are huddled inside, looking out at the rain and the wind. And it looks great. I think we are done, unless there's any other questions about the Parks and Rec. Thank you for staying late, Luke. Are there any other board members' item of interest for future agenda items?
Tiffany and I stayed late too.
Yeah, I will thank you towards the end.
Towards the end, I hope this is.
Well, we got this, and then I'll thank him, but he was, presenting.
I appreciate that.
See, I only get harassed because I can take it, right?
Sorry.
Nobody has anything they want to make sure is on the next?
The one thing I will say is coming up next month, typically for April, I'll put a couple resolutions in front of you for special tax CPI increases based on the year-end CPI changes. They've already been baked into the draft budget here. I want to say it's something along the lines of about 4.5%.
Okay. All right, I guess my only thing is just to update on the FEMA stuff, which clearly you'll give us, and anything else that we need to know about that or the trail.
That could be, FEMA could be on the agenda for the next year or two.
No, just in case there is an update. But that was it for me. All right. I guess I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, everyone.